Hey, what's up guys? So I'm gonna do some maintenance to my outboard motor here. It is a Tracker by Mercury Marine and it's a 50 horsepower and it's the Tracker Force Power series. So I would say my motor runs good, but not great. Sometimes it'll run good all day on the water, and then other times just randomly at especially full throttle, it'll be going along and then it'll kind of start slowing down and struggling, and you can hear it running at higher RPMs but not hitting top speed. So I think it's probably an issue of two things, probably the carburetor here and the throttle linkages. So I'm gonna mess around with those and show you how I do these fixes. So here I have the throttle all the way down in forward gear. So if we come back to the carburetor here, hopefully you guys can see in there, but there's that butterfly in there and it's not fully flush. It should be straight flat down at full throttle. So that means it's not getting all the way open at full throttle. So it needs to be just a little bit farther. So now you can see that if the linkage was adjusted, it should fully be open like that at full throttle, getting the maximum fuel. So to get this carburetor off, there looks like there's just a nut here and a nut here, and a 14mm wrench fits those. So I'm gonna take that off now. So I have the carburetor disconnected from the body, and you just have to disconnect this little plastic linkage here. And there's three little hose lines, two small ones and then a big one that need to come off. So here I have the carburetor all apart, and I've never worked on these, but I'd imagine under this float bowl is where the jets are. So I took that little nut off. Now float bowl comes off. So this might be a part of the problem. This is supposed to be a gasket, and I don't know if you guys can see, but it is super flimsy and brown, and that could be the root of our cause, that the gasket is allowing air to get in. So that's something that probably needs to be replaced. Right in here is a jet, and I've said this a lot in my other videos, but these are made out of brass. So definitely make sure you get the exact size flathead to remove these, or else you will chip them. If you can see, but under this little plastic piece right here, there's actually a hidden jet in there that I'm gonna take out and clean as well. There's also a little intake hole right here, so just gonna clean that as well. Carb cleaner. So make sure all these passageways are all clear. There's also this grooved brass piece in here that I loosened up, and there's a bunch of holes in here, so just make sure that all these little holes are clear. So I have the carb off again, and here's the gasket that went with it, and it's pretty old and crusty and brittle. I even broke it just trying to get it off. Here's the new one. It came in a kit on Amazon for like 10 bucks. Came with other gaskets and then some other needle and seat here. So I'm gonna replace that and then give that a shot. Okay, so I've been tinkering with this motor for about an hour, just figuring out how everything works. So to start off, there's this rubber piece here that are connected to these throttle linkages. So it helps to take that piece off. And you also have this little latch right here. So if you undo that, you're able to adjust these throttle cables. So this is the forward cable, and it's just held on right here. I've already loosened it with just a nut. And then what you can do is you can pop that off, and then you can lift up this piece right here. And to adjust the length of this cable, what you can do is you slide this out, and then this pops out, and then you can twist it forward or backward to adjust it, and then adjust the length of your cable. So I tried that, but that didn't quite fix my issue. Okay, so I have the throttle already halfway down in the forward gear here, and if we come back to the carburetor, you can see that this arm piece right here hasn't moved at all, and this arm piece is what moves this piece right here that opens the butterfly that allows gas to get to the carb. And so with my offhand here, I'm gonna try to move the throttle and show you. So again, it's already halfway down. So I'm moving it, nothing, it's trying, it's moving, pushing down. I'm already 3/4 of the way down. It still hasn't moved. Now finally, give it a little more pressure. It's moving, and that's about it right there. So there's very little movement in this throttle from that halfway point to full throttle. So it's in neutral right now. You can see the butterflies in the closed position. So now I'm going to put it all the way down in full throttle. And so now you can see that that butterfly is perfectly wide open. Okay, I had to do a few things to get that butterfly to open perfectly like flat inside that carburetor. So for one, I had to max out this piece right here quite a bit. So to do that, there's just 2 nuts on each end, and there's just these 2 plastic connectors that connect to these little ball joints, these gold ones here and here. And so I had to extend that quite a bit. Another thing I did was the tension of this piece on this piece right here. So this is just a little screw with a nut on the end, and you want this to be firmly pressed on there. You don't want any play in it, because when you hit the throttle, you want this to immediately engage this piece. So I actually put a little bit of electrical tape on this just to make the surface area a little bit bigger. So there was a tiny bit of play when this would start to move. It wouldn't quite engage it, but now with this carburetor, you can see in there, it's flat down. And so you want it to be just enough tension that it's firmly pressed on there. So once you move that throttle, it immediately moves this piece. Another issue I had, I don't know if you can see down in there, but there's actually a little bit of play in these throttle cables in these little plastic boots that they sit in. So I actually stuffed some shop towels down in there, because when you would move the throttles, these would move a little bit. And so now there's no movement in this area, just because the movement of the throttle on that butterfly is so little as it is. I didn't want any extra movement being wasted to open that butterfly. You might have a different issue. You may need to adjust the length of these cables. So just play around. It took me a couple hours to figure out why I couldn't get it to open. You know, all these pieces are moving pieces and connected. So maybe it's one of these linkages. Could be, you know, the length of this nut right here. This, you can already see I extended a little bit because it was smacking into the side of the motor here. But you may have to play around a bit to find the issue that you're having. So I think the biggest issue I had to do was adjust this linkage right here. I had to adjust it probably about 1 inch and max it out all the way, and that seemed to fix my issue. With this piece right here, again, this is the little rubber piece that this rests on. Once the throttle moves, it opens the butterfly here. And I did try with electrical tape and without. The electrical tape was to make the surface area of this piece a little bit bigger, so when the throttle engages, it hits it that much sooner when this piece moves to open the butterfly. But just messing around with this, I was able to get it to work with and without the electrical tape to open the butterfly fully. You can also adjust this arm piece right here by adjusting the nut. You can loosen it and move it a little forward or backward to get the right height that it rests on this little butterfly piece that opens the carburetor. So I do see here too that the throttle cables must be adjusted if idle speed screw is changed. Well, I kind of did the opposite. I kind of messed with the throttle cables. So if I do need to adjust this idle speed screw, typically when you turn it to the right, it runs at higher RPMs. If you turn it to the left, it runs lower. So I may have to adjust this, but upon firing it up, I'll see how it runs at idle, and then I'll do the proper adjustments. Okay, I'm gonna fire up my motor after doing the carburetor and throttle linkage adjustments. These 2 strokes, you just gotta lift it up a little bit. So what I did was I actually put a little washer here because there's a little too much wiggle room, and I've noticed when you tighten it down, the position of this actually wants to move forward with this nut that I have. So putting this washer here locks it into the place a little bit better and stops it from wiggling here. Okay, we're on the water at the Sacramento River. We're gonna test this carburetor and throttle adjustment to see if it runs at full throttle with no issues. What's up, guys? It's the next day after testing the boat on the water, and I got kind of too distracted fishing yesterday and didn't really give a final review on how the motor performed, so here it is. So I would say the motor ran pretty damn good yesterday, so I think those changes to the carburetor and throttle adjustment fixed the issues that I was having. So for one, the boat sounds a lot smoother. Just before, I wish I had a comparison of before and after on how the boat ran, but just from a sound perspective, the boat sounds like it's running a lot smoother, and especially at that full throttle, there was no hesitation, and it was actually getting on plane a lot sooner, probably about like 3 to 5 seconds sooner. And now that it's running at full throttle and that butterfly is getting fully open, because before it was only getting about 3/4 of the way open, it seems that it's actually running a little bit faster as well, probably a few miles an hour faster. So overall, I think those changes that I did to the carburetor and throttle seem to work. I really just made this video to help out some people. I know some people might have the same motor or similar issues, so hopefully this video helps, and I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.